was idle, no matter what it was, to about 5,000 RPMs. And that was your power band. And it would run smooth all the way up to, then once you hit about 5,000 RPMs, it would fall off on its nose, because that's the limit of its range. Okay. And if you're on the street, you know, back in the day, that was a really good, you know, it's idled good. It was smooth. You put a pop can on the breather. It was nice. Okay. But it wasn't very efficient. Okay. As we all know, an engine is just a big air pump. So if you can make it flow better in, that's going to make more power. Okay. So your first range is going to be something like Edelbrock Performer, whether it's a spread bore or whether it's a square bore from the factory. But just a first step, entry level intake manifold is a good performer. Okay. Hey, if you're watching, smash that like button. And all of them have, all the companies have one of these. Okay. And it's a split plenum. So it splits it in half, and it feeds half on one side of the carburetor and half on the other side of the carburetor for a 4-barrel. It just kind of crosses them over. And it's good for low end use. Okay. So a performer style a dual plane is going to run good from idle to about 5,500 RPMs. Now, hey, have you guys heard? We're doing the first ever giveaway at Uncle Buck's Garage. And what we're giving away is this. I'm giving away this engine right here, minus the valve covers and the T-handles. But this engine is getting given away to a person which will be picked Christmas Day, December 25th of 2025. Happens to be a Thursday, and we do our lives on Thursday. And Christina is going to pick the name out of the hat of who's going to win this. But now, I'm not shipping. You're going to have to come get it. But all you got to do is buy some merch. There'll be a little scroll underneath the screen for all my videos. All you got to do is buy some merch. But the thing is that Spring, the company that makes those T-shirts, they don't give your guys' information out. They're very protective of your information. So to get qualified, you got to send me a screenshot of the purchase from Spring to my email address, bigbuckslater@gmail.com. That's bigbuckslater@gmail.com. You send me that, and you qualify for the deal. Now, you guys that have already purchased in the past, find me the screenshot or send me an email with a picture of the receipt, and you qualify too. So everybody that's bought in the past, so get your orders in, get me those emails so I can get you in the file and see if we can win you an engine. Forgive my penmanship. I'm terrible. I'm old school, right? I'm lucky enough to be able to see those letters. But, okay, so that's your first step. So you're going to gain another 500, 600 RPMs over the top. Okay, it's still going to be pulling as you go, all right? Still have good auto quality, not as good auto quality as the cast iron, because you give up a little bit on the bottom end, but it's negligible. Okay, it's really not noticeable when you do the swap on your car, which I've done that particular swap many times. Okay, and the pickup truck here, Bamalam, it has a dual plenum performer on it. It's what came on it, and so that's what I'm using, and it's a good engine. They haven't really changed the design in 50 years. You know, I mean, it's kind of hard to beat something that works. Okay, so there's no reason to change up something that already works. All right, but then in the late 80s, Edelbrock came out with a air gap style, which lets airflow underneath the plenum, raises it up, and makes more power and helps cool the incoming air fuel charge, which does it. The colder that you can make it, the less heat that can soak into that intake manifold, the more, the better the fuel dispersion and the more efficient it is. Okay, so we're going to go with the next one is air gap. And again, everybody makes one of these. All the companies make one of these, air gap. And the air gap is going to be 1,500 to about 6,000 RPMs. All right, that's the trade-off. Okay, maybe 65. Well, okay, we'll call that 65. 6,500 RPMs. Okay, so are you getting the kind of idea? The 5,000 RPM band? You getting kind of the idea? Okay, so idle to 5,000, idle to 5,500, 1,500 to 6,500. Okay, which if you're running, double duty, running on the street and running on the strip and running a big cam, then you're probably going to want to go with air gap. Okay, and they're not bad intakes. I've had them too. Those are definitely, when you swap them from, like, say, the cast iron, you go straight to an air gap, you're going to notice it on idle. You're going to notice it as taking off because it's going to be cumbersome. It's not going to be crisp. It's not going to be clean. It's going to be you're going to have to, do things with the carburetor to get to work. There are going to be drawbacks to going that high of a RPM range on the top end. Now, once you get past that and you're cruising, then it comes on like gangbusters. And it really works well, okay? But again, if you want nice cruisability, idle quality, this would be the way to go. But if you want to let something a little bit hotter, then we'll go with the air gap. All right, the next one we're going to talk about is an open plenum. And my preference, they make them, Holley makes them, Edelbrock makes them, Victor Juniors, but my favorite has always been Wyans. Wyan Team G's have been my go-to for 40 years. Okay. Did you guys know we have Thursday Night Lives every Thursday, 8 o'clock Central? We have a lot of fun. We have talks like this. Go check it out, okay? So we're going to do open plenum. And again, like I said, they all make these. All the manufacturers make this type of intake, okay? Even the Chinese ones, which I do not recommend, okay? Because the fitment and everything, they're just hacks of the old designs, and they just make them cheap, which they're cheap and they fit that way. Okay, so an open plenum is going to be worth, this is a harsh one, 2,800 to, let me see, if I'm remembering this right, 7,200 RPMs. Again, we're right back to that 5,000-ish envelope, okay? Now, this one's not going to idle good at all. But if you have a light car and you have, say, a 3,000 RPM stall in it, and you have a nice big carburetor, which this is going to take a lot of carburetor to fill that volume up to get enough when you're taking off, and you're foot stomping it, this would be the way to go. Okay, if you're running on the street, I don't recommend this on the street. I have ran them on the street and it was not fun. Okay, you're always tuning. You can't quite get the idle mixture right. It's hit and miss. It's going to be boggy off the bottom, but once you get into that RPM range, it's going to come on like gangbusters. Okay, but this one right here, I would consider it strictly a drag strip type intake. Okay, I wouldn't recommend running one of those on the street because you're not going to have good idle signal. It's not going to have good disbursement between the cylinders unless you get up in RPM range and you're singing. That's when they really work. If you got one that'll sing up to 7,000 RPMs and you're going to the drag strip with on a regular basis, this is your way to go. This is the way to go. This is the key to it. Okay. Now, the last one, and this one surprised me because I never really looked it up, and I've had several of these on street cars. Okay. And they always seem to work. They're not supposed to work, but they always seem to work. And we're talking about tunnel rams. Okay. And far as I know, there's only, unless you want to go, spend big money, the only two companies that are still making these is Wyans and Edelbrock. Okay. You can still get some old classic Holley ones, but Wyans and Edelbrock, you can buy a new one. Okay. And they run And this one surprised me. They run 1,500 to 8,000 RPM range. And once I looked it up, it explained everything to me, because I have run a couple of small blocks and a big block on a tunnel ram with 2 4s, and they seem to idle better than the Team Gs. And that would explain why. I don't get that number. I don't see how it works, but that is from the book, from the company. I looked it on both their websites. From the company, that's the RPM range that a tunnel ram with 2 450s or 2 600s on it, that's RPM range. Which it was always easier for me to tune the idle and to come off the line a little better, and just drivability. You wouldn't think that a tunnel ram would be more docile on the street than it actually is. But I've done it. And I'm going to, you guys might not believe me, but it's true, and that explains why. It's because it's got that huge RPM range. And again, tunnel ram, especially on a big block. Now, all these are small blocks, especially on a big block, though. The tunnel ram was righteous. Okay. I had a 3,000 RPM stall, 373 gears, 3,600 pound car with a tunnel ram on it with 2 450s. Not vacuum secondary. They were all in 450s. Okay. So 900 CFM, off idle. I had to put big squirters in it. I had to put 50cc squirters on both those 400s to get enough gas once you slammed it open that there wasn't a big hole. And I had to play with the power valves and stuff too. But that car was much more, what's a good word? That car was much more fun to drive with the tunnel ram than it was with the Team G, which I put on after the fact. Because I just thought I was overdoing it, because I couldn't get at the time, I didn't have the money, and I was running a stock fuel pump, and that thing would run out of gas in the bowls about half run. And then it would just nose on its face. And you could watch the fuel pressure gauge on it just dump to nothing. And then after a couple of pumps, after you're off of it, it filled the bowls back up and it came back on. It was completely aggravating. So that's why I decided to go with a single carburetor, because I was going to go bracket racing. And decided to go with the single carburetor and the Team G. And it was completely noticeable, the difference idle quality at 1,000 RPMs. It was completely noticeable. It was a completely different engine on idle, but it's all kind of what you're into. Okay. So going off this, how would I, if it was me, how would I set up the next one? Okay, so we got all this. We got our RPM ranges. So there's considerations to everything. All right, there are. It's engine weight, rear end gear ratio, stall in the transmission, size of engine, compression ratio of engine. All kinds of things are involved. Let's say we're talking about just a stock replacement car. Okay, so a stock replacement like this truck. Okay, it's going to weigh about 4,000 pounds, 4K pounds. All right, it's got a 310 or a 333 rear end in it, and a stock transmission. Okay, no, nothing special, right? So with that, yeah, I want better idle quality. I want better torque out of the back end. I want better things. So I would be going with the Performer. For the RPM, which is what it's on it. That's why I kept it on it. Okay. Now, if I was going to do double duty in the same truck, I'd probably go with the air gap. All right. I'd probably go with the air gap if I was going to go street and strip. If I was going to do double duty with it and push on it, I'd probably go with the air gap instead of the Team G, because the Team G is just unmanageable to 3,000 RPMs. Okay. Now, other consideration. Say you have a car that weighs 3,400 pounds and you're dealing with a standard transmission, a 4 or 5 speed. Standard transmission with a 373 gear ratio. Posi. You got a couple choices. For fun, for just drivability, everything, you go air gap because you're going to be revving it coming off that clutch, right? So the air gap would be one of these, or for fun, tunnel ram. And I'll tell you why. Same thing. You're 1,500 to 8,000 RPMs. You're doing you got a 373 gear ratio with a light car. You don't have to have a lot of horsepower, a lot of torque on the bottom end to get it moving, because that 4 and 5 speed is going to handle that for you, because you're going to be revving it up and dumping the clutch. You're not in that RPM range of idle. You're going to be in that RPM range of 1,500 and up. Okay, so there are different things to think about. Okay, big block on the street is going to rip tires apart. You ain't going to get traction. Then you're dealing with the same kind of thing. You're trying to tone it down on the off idle, and get all your power in once you're moving. Okay, same thing. We'll say 3,800 pound car, right, with a big block. With, we'll say, 355 gears. Nice in between highway and street run around. All right. So 3,800 pounds, big block with an automatic. We'll say with an automatic. I would say air gap with that, because it's going to have so much torque because of the size of the engine that it's just going to rip tires off of it. You're just going to be going up in smoke. Even if you're a posi, it's just going to be you're going to be ripping tires up. So you want to soften it off of idle and then bring it on later. And a stock valve train on a big block isn't going to handle anything above 6,500 RPMs. It's just not. I did it on mine, but I had done a little work on it. But my average was, 2,500 to 5,700 going across the stripe. I had it geared right. It would do it all day long. Did it for 6 years and never turned a wrench on it. It was great. Okay. But comment down below if you think that I'm just wrong, which I get a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm just an old guy that's played with this stuff for 40 years. I'm not a wizard. I'm not a guru. This is just the things that I've done. And this is the things that I've learned through trial and error, and a lot of error, of how to make things work better for yourself and have more fun with your hot rod. Okay. And your classic, just have more fun. That's what this is all about. This is not max horsepower. This is not technical. This is, let me put something on and have some fun to make it run better, to say, I've done it with these two hands and I'm making it run better. Okay. But, and this is just me because I've done it several times, 2 4-barrel carburetors sticking out of the hood of a tunnel ram doesn't get any cooler than that. That's the stuff that gets everybody to stop and talk to you at the car show, or on the side of the road, or at the bar, or at the wherever you're going to, at the gas station. Everybody's going to see that, and everybody's going to come over and talk about it. That's going to, a tunnel ram sticking out of the hood will get attention. Okay, basically anything sticking out of the hood is going to get attention, but there's some coolness factor about a tunnel ram. You just look at it and go, it's guttural. It just brings that dude out in you, So, like I said, just comment down below. You ain't gonna hurt my feelings. I'm a grown old man. You can talk trash about me all you want. I don't care. Doesn't bother me a bit. That's what this is all about. It's just about having a conversation about what could be fun. I think a tunnel ram may be in my future. May not be the soon future, but I'm going to have me another one. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions, and other guys will be on here answering questions too. I'm You guys are really coming on strong. I really appreciate all you guys helping other guys out in the comments. That's cool. That's really cool. Answering questions in the comments. That's cool. I highly, but be nice. Okay. If you're not nice, you're gone. Okay. That's just it. This is all about the love of the game. And the game is hot rodding. Carb size, if you go online, if you read all the books, if you do anything, this is the equation they're going to give you. It's cubic inch times max RPM, your red line, how much you want to spit it, times 80% efficiency. I never agree with that number. Divided by 3,456. That number is double 17 something or other because it's on 7. It'd be 17 something because if it was a 2-stroke, because it's a 4-stroke engine, you double it, so 3456. I don't know where that number comes from, but that number is everywhere. Divided by that number, okay, that number is everywhere. So that's the equation that they give you. All the people that's supposed to know what they're doing, and all the books and online. What that translates to is a 350 cubic inch engine at 6,000 RPMs, which is about right, at 80% efficiency. They're not that efficient coming out of the box. Divided by 3,456 equals 510 CFM. 500 CFM is what the book says that engine should have to make it run correctly. Okay. Then, if that's the case, why in the 60s and 70s did they come out with a 625 CFM quadrijet? And an even bigger one on a high-performance engine that actually got Hollies. Okay? And they actually produced a 750 or 800 CFM quadrijet for the big, heavy trucks and stuff, So, with 350 cubic inches, which, okay, so that already doesn't make sense. That one, I feel, on a stock engine might be somewhere close, okay? But the question about the whole thing is right here. That 80% efficiency. I don't think on a stock engine with stock heads, smog heads, I don't even think it's even close to that. I would say it's more like 60% efficiency. It's running as efficient as it's not running as efficient as it could. So it's running at 60% because they got them choked down for emissions and everything through the 70s. So they basically killed them. Okay. So you're in the middle of a build, all right, and you're going to use like some mildly pocket ported heads, and it's going to flow better. You're going to have an intake on it and headers on it. So it's going to flow better in, it's going to flow better out, it's going to have better numbers through the head. So it's going to be more efficient. Hey, if you're here and you're watching, smash that like button. You bought an intake to help it breathe better. You bought exhaust to help it breathe better, but you're not letting it breathe. So stock heads, intake and headers, smallest I'd go would be 650. Or 600 vacuum secondary. Not a double pumper, vacuum secondary, because it's more tame on the street. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about street here, okay? We're not talking about the strip, we're talking about the street, okay? Right now, we're talking about the street, okay? So, but, say on the other hand, if I had a big block with stock heads, but still a nice intake, good exhaust, 2.5 inch, out through turbos or flow masters or whatever, breathing good in, breathing good out, it's, another 40% cubic inches. Bigger runners, more, but they're still, I would say, 80% efficient just with stock heads, unless you do extensive work. Okay. So with that one, I would say there's no way I go under 750 vacuum secondary for 454. A big block of any kind, it would be a 750 vacuum secondary. That's what I would put on. With just with a dual plane intake like a Performer and a set of headers. That's what I would run, the 750. All right. Then, okay, let's just say you went ahead and, you've heard me talk about the AFRs and, double humps and stuff. Say you get say you spend the dime and get a really good set of heads. Then your efficiency number goes way up. because you're not losing all that smog head nastiness, right? So you're going back to, I would say, 90-95% efficiency when it comes to this. If it's a fresh engine, you know, if it's an old engine, it's still 80-85%, but legitimate 80-85%. Now you're dealing with a fresh engine with a real nice set of heads that flow great numbers, with a little bit more spicy intake on it, good exhaust, headers, the whole 9 yards. Then I'm going, we'll say, with new heads. If you can hear, we got jet passing by. You know, we're on the flight line. With a good set of heads, we'll say like a 350, I'm going at least a 750. Now with those heads, now, okay, this is when I would start between a vacuum secondary and a double pumper. That's where I would go. I would be thinking, okay, what am I going to use this engine for, and what platform, and how am I going to use this engine? Because if you're just tooling around town, you could do the vacuum secondary 750. But if you're going to do double duty, if you're going to need it to, when you call on it to make power, then you're talking about a double pumper. But I would just still go with a small block, with a dynamite set of heads, good in, good out, efficient, 750. That's about as big as I would go. Okay. Now, you guys can discuss this all you want. Put the comments down below. I know you guys love talking about stuff like this, but that's just over time, over 40 years, that's what I've come up with. That's what works the best. You can over carburate an engine and really not hurt yourself. You're going to foul some plugs every now and then, and you know, and it's going to be there when you want it, but it's going to be temperamental on the street, especially if you go like an 850 double pumper. You know, if you're not racing it, there's no reason to go that big. Okay, but I still don't agree with that 8% efficiency with a stock engine. That just ain't in the cards. Now let's talk about big blocks. Okay, so we're talking about 454 cubic inches, 427, 454. You know, 502s, 540s. The bigger you get, the more you got to have. Okay, so with a 454. With stock heads, we already talked about that one. We go with 750 vacuum secondary. But you go anything above, if you have the money and you spend the money for a good set of heads, aftermarket set of heads, the ones that flow, and you go towards that 90-95% efficiency volume, then we're 850 to 1050. Then we're 850 to 1050. And I don't know if they still make them, but I think they used to at one time make an 850 vacuum secondary for the street. But basically, once you get this big, they're going to be all in all the time. Dual squirters, all four corner, you know, adjustment, the whole 9 yards. All right. So, and that is, once you go to a certain level, it gets where it's not very streetable. But with say like a Team G intake on a big block, and a high dollar, which, you know, we're talking about thousands of dollars for a set of heads, you know, with all good hardware in it, all brand new stuff, aluminum, it's a huge weight saver. You can definitely use this much. It's got to have the air. It's got to have the air because it's a big air pump. Got to have the air. So with a nice set of heads on a 454 or anything bigger, you're talking about at least 850. Anything past 454, 502, 540, 565, you're a Dominator Plus. Okay. Now, this is a part that I'm old school as they come, and I can remember the 60s and the 70s and seeing these guys running small blocks, or even the pro stock guys running, because, you know, they were regulated to 500 cubic inches, right? And they're running two 1150s. Sideways on a tunnel ram, you know, and doing it right. Now, they were singing those things up to about 75, 8,000 RPMs, but that's where that efficiency comes from. Because by the numbers, if you did the math, they shouldn't need that much carburetor, but they did. They used it all day long, and they weren't fouling plugs, and they were making a ton of power. Okay, so I tend to go, just from experience, I tend to go a little bit big. Everybody says that's wrong. Okay. It's better to have it and not need it, and need it and not have it. I mean, that's as simple. I mean, that old adage is as simple as it gets. So, like, Bamalam here, she's got a 750 vacuum secondary on it because she's got a good intake on it, headers on it. The heads are a little bit more spicy than normal, and I don't know what size cam it is, but it does have a cam in it, so it's more efficient. So, but to tone it down and only have it when I need it, that's the vacuum secondary, okay? And according to this, you're never supposed to put a 750 on a small block. Done it many times, my first one, basically stock power pack headers, performer intake, 292 duration Lenati cam, straight up, 750 vacuum secondary all day long. Took every bit of it. It never had a problem. Never fouled plugs, never had a issue idling, nothing. Ran it for 9 years like that. And it ran just as good the day that I sold it or traded it in, actually, than when I put it out of the box. Because everything said I was supposed to put 500 cubic inches, 500 CFM on that engine. No, we're not going there. No, because I knew I went from the 2-barrel headers on it, intake, and then I had my choice, 600 or 750. And I went 750 because I just always liked, it was really, the really main thing being a 16-year-old was, the dual inlet, fuel. They just look cool. I've been seeing them in the magazines my whole young life, reading Hot Rod and everything. And so I, went in Rome, and it worked great, And the other thing is another one, okay, like with the big block, the 454, that's like we've talked about in another video about the intake manifolds. That makes a sense with the tunnel ram, with two 450s, 900 CFM. It's right in the center. Right there. 900 CFM. With a tunnel ram. Works perfect. It fits right in the glove, to me. Okay? So, if you have any questions, put a comment down below, because everybody, when it comes to this kind of, everybody has a lot of knowledge that they're willing to discuss in the below. Okay, so put your questions down. There'll be one of us that answer it for you, or have a general idea of what to do with what you want to do. Okay, that makes sense. Do with what you want to do. Anyways, so there's a lot of knowledge out there, but that I never agreed with that. Never. I never agreed with that, ever. It just didn't seem to work. The math was just not there. It just, you're supposed to listen to it, but it just didn't seem right. Pistons. And the two types of pistons. Now, I know there's three types, but we're only talking about two types today. That's going to be cast, like this, and forged. And the different uses and the different things you need to consider when you're deciding to build an engine. Cast pistons and forged pistons. A piston is piston. No, doesn't work that way, okay? Cast pistons are put in a hot liquid aluminum. It's poured into a mold, and they let it solidify, and that's what creates a piston. A forged piston is placed into a heater. A slug is placed in a heater, okay? And it's heated up, it's warmed up, and gets all them little molecules inside that metal moving, right? And then it goes into a die. And then it gets pressure, and it gets forged into a piston, okay? And then same process with both of them. They come out of the die, or they come out of the cast, and then they're cleaned up, and that's the way the process is. What would you use a cast piston for? You would use a cast piston basically for just a general rebuild. Okay, cast pistons are made to be strong. They're made to be resilient. They're made to be forgiving. Okay, they're made cheap. Okay, so that's going to be the majority of the pistons that are on the market are going to be a cast piston. Factory stuff came out, unless it was a super high performance or it has a supercharger on it or a turbo on it these days, it's going to be a cast piston. Okay, where you need the forged piston is anytime you're going to add any kind of power adder, whether it's nitrous, turbos, forced induction of any kind, you're going to need forged pistons. Hey, if you're here and you're watching, smash that like button. It really helps the channel. I really appreciate it. So let's talk about what a cast piston can take. Okay, and what I mean by that is about how much pressure, how much oomph you can put on a cast piston and it still live a relatively long life. Okay, I've always been if you put a good set of heads and nice intake, headers, camshaft, you can run a cast rotating assembly, which means cast crank, cast rod, cast pistons. Okay, you can run those and have longevity out of them for, I say, up to 400 horsepower. That's just my opinion. You guys are probably going to sound off in the thing and send me all kinds of nastiness about this. You guys might sound off of it, but that's just my opinion. Okay, over all these years of playing with them, a cast piston will live up to about 400 horsepower, maybe even more. But the problem with cast pistons is that they're resilient to a point. Okay, we learned this the hard way back in the day when the nitrous systems first came out, and all of us had cast pistons. Everything was all bone stock rear ends, and we put these plate systems on all kinds of stuff and blew a lot of stuff up because it isn't where they're melting the pistons. It's where because a piston is made out of aluminum and your rings are made out of steel. Okay, so when you put that much heat like that, hit that button and that heat hits, the rings expand and the piston has nothing to do but break off the top, out of the ring lands. That's what breaks pistons, is that sudden expansion from the steel, because steel expands differently than aluminum does. And that's what caused all the problems back in the day of us blowing pistons out of stuff, is because we just didn't know. Okay? That's when, if you're going to, like I said, that's why, because the forged pistons, because it's put in a die and it's put under pressure and all the molecules, it's twice as strong. I may be exaggerating it or understating it or whatever, but a forged piston is always going to be stronger than a cast piston, just from the process of being produced. Just know that we do a Thursday Night Live, Thursday night at 8 o'clock Central. Every Thursday we talk about things just like this. It's a Q&A. No question when it comes to engines is turned away. We have a great time. I think you'd enjoy it. And like I said, they all they come out of the molds and come out of the die, and they all get cleaned up. And even nowadays, they start putting these protective coatings on the skirts of the forged pistons. Makes them last longer. I mean, the last big block I built had Speed Pro pistons with forged pistons with the coatings on them, and they were cool. I mean, they put, these days they put their design in the coating, and everything. It's as cool as hell. But you have to have that if you're going above and beyond a certain RPM range, a certain power band, a certain, power adder. If you're going to put pressure, when I say pressure, I don't mean just like added, horsepower adders like nitrous and turbos and superchargers. When you're pushing naturally aspirated, trying to push as much horsepower as you can, you are better off with a forged piston once you get past a certain point, because the stock replacement stuff is just not going to hold up. Okay, so I would say, my opinion, in a small block Chevy, anything 350 cubic inches and below, if you try to go anything above, say, 350, 400 horsepower, you're going to need you're going to need a forged everything. Forged pistons, forged rods, and forged crank just to handle the horsepower safely without just destroying parts. Okay. The machining, when it comes to like getting blocks machined and things like that, the machinists are going to ask you what kind of pistons. I'm like the one I have on the stand over there. I actually took the pistons with me so he could find out what they were and how much he was going to have to leave, because a forged piston isn't going to, when it's cold, like all metals, no matter how they're done, aluminum, steel, cast iron, everything, once it gets warm, it swells. The machinist will know what to do. He'll know the manufacturer specs. He'll get online and figure it out, and he'll give you the right boring and honing for the piston you got, along go with the rings that you have. There are a lot of considerations when it comes to it. So just to recap, so a cast piston with no power adders will live nicely in a nice little street engine. If you're deciding to go with a power adder, a nitrous, a turbo, a supercharger of any kind, you are going to have to go forged. It's the cast piston is not going to live in that environment. It's just not. It's not designed for that. And the other consideration is cost. Cast pistons are cheap. Forged pistons are expensive. I mean, they are. I mean, because of the manufacture process is so entailed with a forged, as opposed to a cast where they just pour in a mold, put the mold on top, let it solidify, and they pull it out, they clean it up, and they put it in a box. It's very economical to produce. As opposed to a forge, you have to have a lot of material, you have to have a lot of machinery, heat sources. There's a lot involved in producing a forged piston. Okay, I hope this gave you enough information so you can make an informed decision for yourself of it. Once you get into engine build, what you want to do with it decides what type of piston that you use in that engine build. How do you decide what size of cam you put in your hot rod? It isn't just as simple as buying one, putting it in, and hoping it works. There's a lot that goes into it. I'm gonna show you on the whiteboard, old school, how we used to figure it out, and all the kind of the dumb stuff that we'd done back in the day, and how you learned what worked and what didn't. So by the end of this, you will know exactly which way you should probably go. And if you want to have a little bit more fun with it, there's some little things you can do to like get around it a little bit. I'm going to show you every little thing that I've learned over the years, and let's see if we can get you a camshaft picked out for your hot rod. All right, first thing is this is not a Chevy only. This is Chevy, Ford, Dodge, anything pre-computer, okay? Because everything pre-computer from the 50s on up to everything ran off a vacuum, okay? So first thing is you want to talk about advertised duration. All right, it doesn't matter what brand you go with. They all have their grinds that there is no new grinds. All the testing has been done way back in the day, okay? So, but here's the deal. The first thing you can talk about is duration. Okay, duration. That's how long the valve is open in the heads. The duration of the opening of the valve. Now, duration goes from the moment it cracks to the moment it shuts. That's the duration of the camshaft, okay? So the factory ones from way back in the day, they were made to make the engine smooth, idle nice, be quiet, be tame, be docile, be enjoyable, be able to set a pop can on top of a breather and not have it rattle off, okay? This is not what we're talking about, because that hampers the amount of power that an engine can make. An engine is just a big fancy air pump. So if you have a big amount of air coming in and you have it squelched and a small amount of air going out, then you're not going to make as much power as that engine is capable of making. Okay, so that's why you start dealing with a larger camshaft with more duration. Okay, so most generally, if I remember correctly, a stock duration, advertised duration, this is not that 0.05 bullshit. This is advertised duration for the cam. Okay, duration. Stock cam is about 253 to 55 advertised duration. That's a stock cam. That's when they come out of the factory from like 1978 in a Chevelle, Malibu, whatever it was. Okay, anything small block, that's about stock. Okay. Now, there are some things you have to think about. They can go up to 305, 07 with a hydraulic tappet cam, not a solid, not a roller rocker cam or a roller cam, but just a base regular lifter camshaft. 305 to 307, that's about as big as they made them. Okay, they might make them bigger now, but that was the standard back then. Okay, so the problem with duration is you have to make a vacuum for your accessories to work, your heaters, your distributor, and your brakes. If you have a brake booster with, like on this one, with the vacuum brake booster, you have to have it make a certain amount of vacuum to make those work correctly. Or a brake booster with too much duration on a camshaft doesn't make enough vacuum, and it doesn't work good. It doesn't work well. Okay, so how big can you go without it affecting the brakes and the heater and the distributor? Well, we found out the hard way, and it ends up being about 270 degrees of duration. That's your ceiling for vacuum. Okay, now competition cams actually came out with that cam, but before it'd be a 262, it'd be 268, 280, 292, 305. That was kind of the standards of what that was the scale for the camshafts. Okay, so they did the testing, and in the mid 80s they came out with this cam, a 270 duration camshaft. All right, now that one still run the brakes. That one run all the accessories that run off a vacuum, and you can put that in anything. And they actually made them with not too much lift, and we'll talk about lift in a minute. Okay, so stick around, we'll talk about lift. So 270 was about your ceiling. That's why Comp Cams sold a ton of 268 duration kits, because you could put that in and it wouldn't affect anything. It would just make it a little choppier, make you some more power, better air in, better air out, but it wouldn't affect your accessories. Okay, and that was Ford, Chevy, Dodge, whatever it was. Okay, so how big can you go on the street? Okay, now back in my day, we played around with them a lot. We had some guys that were just tried and true. They go as big as you could freaking get and everything. Now, I ran two engines in my first hot rod. The first one had the 268, and the accessories run great. And once I got the bug, then I bumped it up. I went to a Lenati 292 duration cam. All right. Didn't know nothing, I was a kid, didn't know nothing about it. So I said, I don't want to go that big, because the 292 duration with Lenati, it was a 480 lift, which a 480 lift was just a set of springs back in the day. And it still kind of is now too. Okay. But when I put that in my hot rod and I had a vacuum brake booster, I had no brakes, none. I had to buy what they used to call, and I think they still do call, a vacuum canister. Okay. And it's just a big can with an outlet in and an outlet out. One going in and one going out. And it's about this big. It's about the size of a charcoal canister, if you guys know what a charcoal canister is. And I put it in my car where the charcoal canister was supposed to be. And I ran a vacuum line from the intake to it and then back to the brakes to make the brakes run. And it took about 2 days of driving, and it finally held a vacuum. It's like a reservoir, a vacuum reservoir. And it held enough vacuum that then after it finally had enough, the brakes started working. And that's what you had to do if you went above the 270 duration. You had to get a vacuum reservoir, okay? Or else it would not work. I mean, on the street, just day-to-day driving, you would have no brakes. It'd be, none. It's like, if you guys remember back in the day, if you lost power what it was like to hit the brakes with the engine not running, no vacuum. It was dangerous, okay? That's how accidents happen. So that's what you had to do back in the day. Now, I've seen guys run 280 duration cams and still have the vacuum, but that was because of a narrow lobe centerline, okay? A lobe centerline on a camshaft is the centerline between the intake and the exhaust centerline, opening and closing, okay? So if you have, like with the 292 cam that I was running, it had about 112, 114 degrees lobe separation. If you can get a cam with, say, 280 degrees duration and get a center line, a lobe center line of about 108 degrees between the two lobes, tighten this up, it's a lot more vacuum sensitive that way. So you could theoretically run a 280 duration cam and still run your brakes if you got a narrow lobe center line. And so, but I didn't do that back. I had to get the canister, but there's more ways to skin a cat than a lot of people let you think. So, like in the new one, I have in the one that I built, the $500 rebuild, I put a 292 duration cam in it, and with a lower center line, because I know this one's going in. If it goes in, whatever it goes into, it's not going to be a power assisted brakes. It's going to be a manual brakes, which doesn't require a vacuum. All right, now we done decided you can get 280 degrees if you go 108 degrees center line or 107 degrees center line, but right now 270 is as high as you can go on the street without having to play around. You can just put it in, set it straight up, and you can go. Okay. So we've talked about duration. We've talked about vacuum signal. Now we need to talk about lift. Okay. Now when you're running a street engine and you're running less than 6,000 RPMs, 480 lift, the difference between 465 and 480 lift is not that much. I mean, that's, that's a half an inch, and you're just talking about like that much. It's not much. So where this cam, the 292 cam, it was a little naughty. It was a same duration, which means the intake was a 292, the exhaust was 292, but the lift was 480. Okay, where a stock one's about 425. So you're talking about half of an inch minus 600ths. So it's not that much. It's not that much lift difference. Okay, so 480 is a decent number for lift. I consider 480 a ceiling for like a street cam, because you can buy the springs you would need for the 480 lift, which you do need to replace the springs. If you go anything above stock, you need to replace the springs that goes with the duration of the cam that you use. Okay, but 480 always seemed to me like the good number. You could the parts were inexpensive. They didn't break. You weren't beating the hell out of them. You weren't going really outlandishly high, and everything just seems to work better 480 and below with the street engine. Okay. Now some of them go up there. I mean, but you're kind of, when it comes to a flat tappet cam, you have your limitations when it comes to lift also. It's not the same with a solid cam or a roller cam. Those things can get outlandishly large lift numbers, but just a standard tappet cam, about 505 lift, 503, 505 lift is about as high as you can go. Now you can cheat that with some 1617 roller rocker arms, but 480 seems to be like a really good number. Okay, it's very reliable, and I've never had anything break or anything go bad with it. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is same duration as opposed to split duration. Okay. I have always been a fan, even though I ran that 292 Lanati, which was 292 intake, 292 exhaust, same lift numbers. I've learned over time that I like a cam that has higher duration and lift numbers on the exhaust, okay? Because that's, most of the times, that's your problem. Or you can get some power by cleaning the cylinder out better on the backside, okay? You're getting good air in, you're making the power, but you got to get rid of it. And even though if you're running cams, if you run a same duration, it can be a hindrance, okay, when it comes to fouling the next signal coming in. You know, sometimes the cylinders just don't have enough time and duration to clean themselves out enough, and some of that stays and fouls the new air-fuel ratio coming in for the next hit on that piston. So about 87, 88, I started doing split duration cams, which, like the one in the race car, it was a 286 duration intake, and it was a 298 duration exhaust. Which, the thing about this is it really thumps hard. It really sounds great, especially with a big block. Small block, yes, but a big block, really, that kind of a cam, it just thumps. And I believe the intake, we'll just use a general number, but the lift on this, say, was 500 because it was a big block, and the lift on this was, say, 520. So it had more duration and more lift on the exhaust, which helps clean the cylinders out, which makes it more efficient, because that's all you're really doing is you're taking this and making it more efficient, making it better air in, better air out, big pump. So this was a dynamite cam that cam is the cam that I beat on for the 6 years of bracket racing the big block, the Camaro. Never had to turn a wrench on it, but I did have roller rockers on it. I did run them like once a year. I reset them in the spring before we started racing. But that was it. But that's a split duration. So that one also had, because I was going to use it at strip, it had a stall in it and all that kind of good biz. But it had, I think it was 112 degrees lobe separation as opposed to 108, because I didn't even evacuate. I had took the booster off of it. It was manual brakes. Didn't have any heater system in it. You know, I caged it out. It was a bracket car. So today, if you ask my advice, what would I tell you to buy? If you want something that's fun to drive, reliable, easy to go, I would go a 268 duration cam straight up, and that's going to be about a 465 lift, and you can put that in dot to dot. You don't have to degree it, do anything, and that'll run all your brakes, your accessories, and everything. If you want to go a little bit spicier, I would go a 280 degrees duration, 108 degrees or less lobe separation, with about a 480 lift. If you wanted a same, if you wanted a 280 duration, 480 lift, 480 lift. Or if you wanted to get a little bit spicier, you get to go 278 duration at 108. And then on the exhaust, you might go 286 with the same 480 lift, which will scavenge the exhaust out better and make it a little bit more spicier, but because of the lobe separation, it'll still have enough vacuum to run your accessories with. So, and that one will be it'll sing. That cam will sing. That cam will sing too, but not as throaty as that one, because with the extra exhaust duration, it really does pump through the pipes, and it sounds really tough. Okay, so I hope this helped. I know you guys are going to have a lot of opinions on it. You can put them down below. Doesn't hurt my feelings. You can say whatever you want to say, but this is just what we did back in the day, and this is kind of what I still go with to this day. All right, and that's a cam that's going in, the new one I'm going to build. I'll try to build that one for under $1,200, but it's all machined and new parts and new bearings and everything. I'm going to do that one right, but that's probably the cam that's going to go in at the 278, 286, because I'm going to probably drive that one on the street, because it's going to have just a Nice, mellow ported out 882 heads. So I hope this helps. Give you guys some parameters, some ideas of what you would like to do for your hot rod and your project. So if you guys have any comments, comment down below. Don't forget that we do Thursday night lives every Thursday night at 8 o'clock Central. We have a lot of fun. We talk about stuff like this all the time. It's just really a lot of fun. We have a really good time and a lot of regulars, and it's a great Q&A. You can ask whatever you want, and when it comes to engines, there's no question that's not going to get answered by me or by somebody in the comments. Street racing, 60 styles, everything thumping, Camaros, Chevelles, all that stuff. It brings back all those memories. You say double humps, you don't have to say anything else. People automatically, bing, goes in their head, right? When they first come out 50 years ago, okay, they were really good. They were good numbers. They flowed good. They made good power. You know, they produced thousands and thousands of them, but technology has come on for the same CC size and for the same, you know, basically the same valve size and chamber design, the whole 9 yards. Okay, flow numbers for a double hump head at 500s lift, which I usually run a 480 or 460 cam, so we're just going to use 500. Everybody does it by, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 500-inch lift cam. Okay, flow numbers for a 202 is 202 CFM. Okay, that's 202 CFM. Okay, at 500 lift. Okay, we'll just go. What on the market right now? Everybody's talking about AFRs. Okay, the AFR, the 195. The 195 ports. They just came out with the 200s, but the 195 ports, which are basically the same port size and shape and configuration as a 202 head, they run. Hey, since you're here and you're watching, smash that like button. They run 275 CFM at 500s lift. Okay, so that's right at about, is that what, 20% better? Okay, just on the intake, okay, at 500s lift, all right? So that's 202 as opposed to 275, all right? Now, exhaust. And you guys know, if you guys watch my videos, I like heads that scavenge exhaust off because it cleans the incoming charge for the new hit on that cylinder. So the better it flows out the backside, the better it is. Okay, it's a more efficient air pump. Okay. Now, on the double hump heads, the exhaust flow at 500s lift for exhaust is 141 CFM. For the exhaust for the AFR heads is 213 at 500s lift. That's a massive difference. Okay. So we've already established, okay, 202 as 275, 141, 203. I mean, 213, I'm sorry. It's okay. Just that alone is substantially more power. I mean, that's just unbolting them and putting them back on. Okay. Those are the numbers. Now let's talk about coolness factor. Let's talk about everything else that's involved. We're not just talking about just taking them off, bolting them on, you know, making power. Okay. Now, if you're that guy that has to have, you know, by the numbers, 202 heads and the 69 Camaro, you know, with a rock crusher 4-speed, I get it. I really do get it. I get it, you know. And I'm talking about just a street. This is just street driving up to 6,000 RPMs, okay? On the street, you know, double hump heads, yeah, they're cool. You go to a car lot, you see one, you spot those little humps, you know, on the side, on the end of the head, you know, in the parking lot at the car show, and you know what that is automatically. You know that was originally a high performance, 50 years ago, high performance producing head. Okay, those engines ran great. All right, but If you don't have to do that, if you don't have to have something that's concourse original, that's by the numbers matching, blah, 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 you know, date codes and all this kind of stuff. Do you guys know we do Thursday night lives? Every Thursday at 8 o'clock Central, we do a live Q&A about engines, motors, trucks, cars, whatever you want to talk about. We have a great time. You really enjoy it. Check it out. I don't see where the reasoning is to not buy newer stuff. Okay, so first thing is, if you're looking for some, you'd have to find them. And since they're double humps, you're going to pay dearly for the cores. Just a rebuildable core, if you can find them. I'm sure there's out there. If you do enough searching, you can find whatever you want, whether it's, you know, Marketplace or Craigslist or whatever it is, racing junk, whatever it is, you can find it. Okay, you can. They're out there, but you are going to pay dearly for them because they're double hump heads. Okay, so there's that expense. Okay, and then you have to have them decked because they're 50 years old. They've been hot and cold for 50 years. They've been sitting in barns. They've been, you know, they've been abused. They're not going to be good shape. So you got to have them surfaced. You got to have a valve job done. You got probably going to have to replace valves. You're going to have to replace springs. You're going to have to replace just pretty much everything on the hardware on the head itself, just to get it up to par. You know, hardened exhaust seats, because none of them came with them in the 60s. You know, with the unleaded gas, you know, you got it. There's so much expense. And machine work is not cheap anymore. One thing, but if you go to a regular machine shop these days, that equipment they have in there, it's expensive on them. They have bills to pay too. They have to charge you what they have to charge you to make money, to be able to keep the lights on and keep it open so you can bring the next one into so you can get machined. Okay, so machining is not cheap. All right. With a brand new casting, you get a brand new casting when it comes to like an AFR. I mean, there's nothing to do. It just comes in the box. You pay your money. It comes in a box. It's got everything new, from the valves, the springs, keepers, locks. Everything is new. You know, studs, guide plates, everything is new. You ain't got to worry about stress cracks. You ain't got to worry about checking everything out. It's brand new in the box, and it's guaranteed. Okay, that's the other thing. If you buy new from a manufacturer and it comes in, it's not quite right, they'll guarantee it. I mean, they kind of have to, because, you know, with the internet these days, word gets out, right? When you're taking an old set of heads and refurbish them, there's no guarantee on nothing. They're going to flux core them and they're going to check them for cracks and everything. But if they booger up, it's on you, okay? Because you bought an old set of heads you brought in and trying to refurbish into a new set of heads. The quality of the materials used to make them, the parts, the heads themselves, everything has come leaps and bounds in 50 years. Okay. The power is from flow, but RPM range and things like that is from weight. Okay. So compared to an old intake valve, compared to a new intake valve, the weights are different. The new ones are lighter. They're stronger. They're back cut. They come ready to rock. Okay. Weight in a valve train it robs power. Okay. And it also, if you want to go anything past, say, 55, 57 to 6,000 RPMs, then you're really dealing with weight. That's why all them racers that run 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 RPM, they run titanium everything, because the weight, the rotating assembly, just the friction from the weight is your deciding factor when it comes to RPM range. Okay, so that's why big blocks don't like a lot of RPM unless you spend a ton of money on super light valve train parts. Okay, so the old stuff is way heavier than the new stuff. You know, the technology has just come on like gangbusters. I mean, there is no comparison at all. None. You can spend the money, again, there you go, with more expense to be able to retro, you know, one with lighter parts and stronger new parts. But then again, more cost. Okay. You could theoretically bring a set of double hump heads into the modern age with the new materials, with the new valves and the springs and the retainers and the locks and everything involved. You know, you buy everything brand new, you know, and roller rockers, the whole 9 yards. You can get all that stuff bought for, but you're going to be just as much money in as buying a set of brand new aluminum AFR heads. And that's the other thing, is that I know GM made aluminum heads because, you know, Ford made aluminum heads because of Le Mans, okay? GM kind of got into it too, but they still, those numbers ain't even as good as the new technology. So your valve train parts with the new technology is lighter than the old stuff. It's the cost, I would say, is a push if you can find a deal like a, you know, like Summit runs, you know, Christmas deals. If you can find a deal, 200 off, you know, spend whatever, that sort of thing, you could theoretically get a good set of heads for pretty cheap. And the flow and the power availability is better with the new technology. And then, of course, the weight of the heads themselves, because you're going from cast iron to aluminum, which, you know, everybody knows every 100 pounds off of whatever it is a tenth of a second, whether you're on the street or you're on the strip. So everybody has their own opinion. And I'm not knocking double hump heads. I'm just saying, in reality, in today's age, you're almost, it's a push. Today's age, it's a push, because you can spend all the money to refurbish and retro an old set of 202 heads, and they still won't flow as much as an out-of-the-box AFR 195 200 or any other brand out there, whether it's Edelbrock, whatever company it is you deal with. You know, Brodix, a street 195 200 cc runner head is going to produce more power than a retroed out, you know, endless supply of money set of double hump heads. There's, you know, plus on top of it, you can run more compression with aluminum because it's more forgiving for a compression ratio because it dissipates heat faster. Okay, so you can run 9.5 to 1 compression ratio, where you can run 8.5 to 1 with cast iron heads and no detonation. So you guys decide, but this is just the realities of the world we're living in right now. So once I run out of cast iron heads, and if I decide that I really want to go fast, I'm probably spending the dime on a good, solid, basic street head aluminum, just because you can pour it and polish and work and do, you know, and surf it and do all that stuff. Everything I've talked about, you can do all that to an old set of heads, and it's still ain't going to flow as good as out of the box brand new heads. Just not. It's the way it is. Comment down below. I know you guys got lots of comments about this. You know, headers versus exhaust manifolds. But today we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about from real world experience of having done it, been there, done that, and I'm going to explain the ins and outs of both. And by the time we're done, you should have a really good idea of what decision to make for your project. Okay, first thing is exhaust manifolds from the factory are not designed to produce the most power. They're designed to be quiet. They're designed to be cheap and economical for the manufacturer to make, and they're designed to last basically forever because they're cast iron, and you really got to do some damage or get them really hot or do something to them to really mess up in a cast iron exhaust manifold. They are tough. Okay, they're very, very tough, but they don't flow good. They're designed for a better experience for the customer, and during the mid-70s, they were also designed to be more eco-friendly, with the air ports in them and the air pumps and everything to try to clean up the exhaust, because, you know, the EPA was after everybody in the mid-70s, after the muscle car area, you know. So exhaust manifolds had their place at one time, but not really anymore. Every vehicle out there would benefit power-wise with headers, because exhaust manifolds are designed for economy and to be quiet. Exhaust manifolds are quiet. headers, open headers, you know, they're loud. They're open tubes and they're loud. You put a exhaust manifold on an engine, and it's quiet. It's I could if I got to set it down there on the floor. If I put them on there, even with this cammed up engine that's in it, you could basically, if you wanted to, you could, if with exhaust manifolds, with a piece of pipe on it, that like just little turnouts, just to get it out from underneath the deal, you'd be able to drive it around town, and the cops would be no worse for it. I mean, they are just designed to be quiet, right? They're not designed for any kind of power adder whatsoever. Matter of fact, they choke them down. Exhaust manifolds cheap. They're very, very cheap as compared to a good set of headers. Now, headers I have on here, they're Summit brands, but there are some headers out there that are going to cost you a lot of money. But if performance is what you're after, it's the only way to go. It's the only way to go for on the street is headers. Like I've said for years and years and years, it's good air in, good air out. And I don't care. I'm talking from experience. I did the whole progression on my couple of my first hot rods, okay? And it was the first thing I did that I went from being just pitiful loser to really starting to come on the track was headers. It was headers. They were like a turning point. I had already had dual exhaust with turbos on the first car, and headers, it was like a half a second at the quarter. It was the minute I backed out of the muffler shop, it was noticeable in the seat of your pants and in the pickup in the car. It was night and day. Now I will say it was a little tingier and the exhaust was louder and it rumbled more, but it was a game changer. You can't make me believe that a stock set of exhaust manifolds that haven't been modified, you know, because you know there are those classes out there that they have to run whatever came factory. They can't run headers, and they make those things sing, okay, and run hard. But I can guarantee you, them exhaust manifolds have been worked extensively. I'm probably sure there ain't much material left in those things. They're just as hogged out as they can get them. But that's the class they got to run in. You know, I mean, yeah, if you want to, you could probably port a set of exhaust manifolds like you can a set of heads. You know, but for me, for just as economical as it was on this one, no, I'll be going headers the rest of my life. As long as I'm building cars and trucks, hot rods, I'm putting the headers on everything. If you're making a 55 Chevy, you know, or 57 Chevy, you know, that's got to be concourse perfect, you got to have those manifolds, okay? But just for basic tooling around town, the exhaust manifolds are going to be quieter. It's going to sound deeper, but it's going to choke off performance. Where the headers are going to be louder, they're going to flow better, and they're going to make more power. That's just the way it is. There's no other way around it. There's no way to, you know, gild the lily or, you know, color coded or gold plated or whatever it is. Headers will always outperform cast iron exhaust manifolds. You got the intake, you got the carburetor, you got the exhaust, you got the heads worked a little bit, or you got new heads. Now you have to make it burn. Now you have to upgrade your ignition system. Okay. So when you're talking about that, talking about ignition system, there's basically three ways you can go. All right. You can go a stock points type distributor. You can go a HEI this type distributor, or you can go an aftermarket ignition system setup. With the stock one, like the points type, you know, like the small cap, like you saw on your grandpa's 57 Chevy, you know, with the points, with the dwell, the whole 9 yards, those were the original. Those were what originally everything came out with, okay? They were problematic because that's why XL came out in the mid 60s with the dual point distributors, which had it was a backup, you know, so that it wouldn't float at certain RPMs, because they're very RPM sensitive. They're very adjustment sensitive. They're a pain in the butt. Okay, they were. I mean, that's back when tuning was tuning. When the distributor was mechanical, the carburetor was mechanical. Everything, you know, you had to know how to make things work. Okay. Now, you can still run one of those, but nowadays everybody is taking a company like Pertronics and taking all of that, the points and the dwell and all that out, and putting a ignition system, electronic ignition module inside there to replace the points. Which, you know, if you're in a space saving situation, it's a completely viable doable. I mean, they work Ford, Chevy, Chrysler, anything with a distributor. You can put one of those on there and buy a better coil, and you're up and running, and you're doing good, okay? And then in 1973, GM came out with an HEI, electronic distributor, the big cap, the big ones, okay? The ones that's in everything, every square body, Camaros, Malibus, all of them. And they all had them, whether they were Oldsmobile, Pontiac engines, Cadillacs, they all had the electronic ignition, because they were just so much more efficient. And they were just put it in, set the time in, and you're gone. And there's no messing with it. There's no dwell, there's no nothing. The combustion was better, power was better, drivability was better, and you didn't have to bring it into the mechanic every 3 months and have them set the dwell. That was the 1973 was the game changer when it came to distributors, okay? Now, back in the 80s, you know, everybody started getting a little bit more performance oriented, the 70s and 80s, and so when the electronic distributors came out, the HEIs, all the aftermarkets came online, and they produced better coils, better caps, better spark plug wires. You know, the technology started taking off to put additions onto the an HEI distributor, okay? But it has its limitations also, okay? Once you get past a certain performance point, RPM range, everything, you got to think about bulking up. And that's where, like, for the race car the Camaro that I built, I went MSD, a complete system, 6A box, distributor, coil, wires, everything MSD, because at that time, and I still feel at this time, that they are still the best company out there. Now, there's other XLs, you know, things like that, but MSD is the only one that you can buy a complete kit. Comes in a box, you just put it all back on. Okay, but what MSD is called, multiple strike distributor, or I'll have to look it up, but MSD just, to me, always means multiple fires per cylinder instead of one. Like, I had a friend, when I first put it on my first hot rod, I just put a 6A box on. And this is analog. This is before they went digital, okay? And I put a 6A box on the hot rod, and he had the old style scope, and it would just show fire. And I had it in before, and one fire per cylinder, and you could see it, you know. And then once I put that MSD on, that 6A box, six fires per cylinder. So it was noticeable on the car, because it just ran cleaner. Never had a foul spark plug, because everything was completely burned in that combustion chamber because of it. Okay, so, and MSD is still the brand, like NHRA still uses under top fuels. I mean, the magnetos and stuff. I mean, MSD is a legit, solid company. I've never had a problem with any of their products, okay? So, once you get to a certain point, or if you want to go racing, or if you need consistency, or if you need something above and beyond just stock, then you have to go aftermarket. You have to, because you can only patch so much on a regular HEI distributor. There's only so much you can do. You can only make it make so much power. Where an MSD with the 6A, the new digital boxes, which are completely tunable, you know, which is also a plus because you can have a rev limiter under, you can protect your parts, you know, the whole 9 yards. But the multiple spark, when it comes, if you're running alcohol, if you're running E85s, if you're running anything that takes a lot of, you know, a lot of volume of fuel, you got to burn it. And a regular distributor system is not going to do it. It's just not going to handle it. It's just my opinion, but I would say anything over a 600 CFM with a good set of heads, even on the street, you know, if it's by the numbers, they say that's too big for like a 350 engine. If you're worried about it, buy you a 6AL box and just hook it up to the, you know, they make a kit with just the box that you can put on an HEI. But if you're going racing, if you're playing double duty and you're going to be beating on it and you need to be consistent and you need to burn every last atom of fuel you're throwing at it, aftermarket is the only way to go. And my personal is just MSD. I mean, I don't know if I have a sticker. Yeah, I do. I got a sticker right there. I mean, I've spent the money, you know, and they're not cheap anymore. They are definitely not cheap. I mean, I've been out of the business, racing business for 10, 15 years, and I've got sticker shock. I mean, the big block with the tunnel ram had full MSD system on it, and I didn't pay half of what they want for to retro one into like a new style big block. I mean, they're pricey, but if you got to have it, you have to have it, and they are well worth it. Okay, so that's just the way it is. All right. While you're here, remember, we do Thursday night lives every Thursday night, 8 o'clock Central. We talk about stuff just like this every night. We have a good time. I enjoy doing these every Thursday. I look forward to them every Thursday. So I hope to see you there. Y'all have a great day, because great day today could mean a better working ignition system in the future. Y'all be good.